I wanted to take a moment to talk about a feeling that I think a lot of us carry around, the feeling that we're behind in life. You're behind where you're supposed to be, you're behind where your friends and peers are, you know, you're behind and following an invisible timeline that nobody actually set for your life. Well, in this video today, I want to talk about why where you are in life is exactly where you need to be. So, for me, I've definitely had this feeling more times than I care to admit, primarily when it comes to my career and also when it just comes to achieving those milestones that you follow in following the blueprint of success, right? So for me, when I started my career in tech, I was coming, from a non-technical background. And and I was a lot older than a lot of the people that I worked with. So I ended up going to like a technical school, to learn all of the basic skills and to also learn the beginning and the basics of cybersecurity. And I remember having a bit of difficulty struggling with learning the cybersecurity aspect of it, like the hardware, software, and a little bit of networking. To me, that was a lot easier to get because I was pretty computer savvy. I didn't know before I went to tech school. I didn't know like all the inner workings of a computer and everything, but I could find my way around a computer pretty easily, right? So when it came to learning the cybersecurity aspect of it, I struggled. I struggled a lot. And I remember when I landed my, first tech job and I'm just now starting out. I started out, working the help desk like a lot of people do, that follow traditional tech careers. Usually when you start from the bottom and work your way up, right? And usually help desk is like the bottom, right? And I just remember, again, I'm a little bit older than a lot of the people that I worked with. And I just remember, everybody around me just seemed to be just going after one certification after another, like as they, just progressed in difficulty with each level in such a short amount of time. And I remember like kind of comparing what I was doing and where I was at in my career compared to what they were doing. And I always, and this was probably really like within the first, I would say 2 years of my career. Like I always just felt like I was, behind on like how quickly I should have been advancing. And quite honestly, I advanced pretty fast when you take a step back and look at the grand scheme of things. And I'll dive deeper about that in a different video, that experience in general. But the point I'm trying to make with this story is I always felt like I was just not progressing fast enough. Like I wasn't getting the certifications fast enough. I wasn't getting that next big job fast enough. And I was just seeing a lot of the people that I was working with moving on to the next thing, so quickly. And I was just kind of just taking my time. And I remember having a conversation one time about getting another advanced level cybersecurity cert. And I recall just having this feeling. I was like, well, dang, I just got this one cert and it was really hard. Like, can I just bask in the glory of that and just learn some stuff before I jump on to the next one? Like I was just like, man, that one cert took so much out of me. My brain was like fried, and here I am like a week later having a conversation with someone about starting to, studying and going after the next big cert. And I was just like, geez, needless to say, they went on ahead and did it, but I was just like, man, no, like, give me a minute to process everything and figure out what I'm doing with my life. And I just remember having that conversation, and then from that point, just kind of always really feeling like I wasn't moving fast enough, like I wasn't advancing quick enough, right? And fast forward to today, was so, because hindsight is 2020. When you're in the moment, you don't really understand the significance of being on your own timeline and how that plays into your experiences later in your career. And talking about that particular thing, because I was able to ultimately, to make a long story short, ultimately, because I took my time and like in between certifications, I actually, really learned, my job really well, and really taking from each experience, each, job experience, and just building upon that, it ultimately helped me be extremely well, extremely better prepared to take the advanced level certs at the time that I took them. Whereas I had such a deeper understanding of how things worked that it was pretty easy, I would say, compared to how it was prior, to get a lot of these high level certifications. And that was just kind of my first lesson as far as my career is concerned. That, you know what? You can't pay attention to what they're doing. You have to just focus on what you're doing, because I was ultimately way better for it. Like, I just had such a deeper understanding of things, instead of just like piling up, trying to, cram, for an exam. And then ultimately just brain dumping, after, and just moving on. I just had such a deeper level of understanding for things because I was taking my time and doing things in my own time, just understanding more about how I learned, how I worked. All of those things ultimately ended up helping me so much more in my career. And that was just the first kind of lesson I had in just telling myself, okay, you can't, you know, compare yourself to what other people are doing. They're in their own timeline. Ultimately, you don't know the path that they're on. They don't know the path that you're on. So you just got to keep it focused on your focus, and worry about yourself, right? So that was, I think, one of the first times in my career where I kind of just felt like I was just far behind. But then now being able to look back on it, and understanding, no, that is why you weren't moving as quickly as everybody else, because you were taking in some other things that was way more beneficial for you in your overall career, right? And that's what I want to say to you. Like, your experiences and what you're going through, they're helping to shape what is yet to come. You know, you can't compare what you're doing, you can't compare what you see other people doing to what you're doing, because ultimately you really don't know what those people are dealing with, what they've had to sacrifice, what I mean? You just don't have the complete picture, you know what I mean? You just see the highlights more so than the behind the scenes, just like vice versa. They may see your highlights and, not understand the behind the scenes, but ultimately that ain't none of your business. You know what I mean? It wasn't none of my business to worry about what other people were thinking, right? So I just offer that, food for thought to you. Just what you're going through now is preparing you for what you have in store in your future, right? All right, the second time where this feeling really, really, really stood out for me was when I bought my house. I bought my first home, right? For a first time home buyer, first time homeowner, right? And I remember I was, I really wasn't super excited about it. Like, I was happy that I was able to accomplish it, but I wasn't particularly excited about it. And the reason why, and I remember having this conversation, I think with my mom, she was like, oh, she was so happy and so excited for me. And she was like, girl, you did it. You got you just bought your first home. You know, aren't you happy? Aren't you excited? And I just remember saying, yeah, but I'm old. Like, I was like, but I'm so old and I'm just now buying my first home. I just feel like I'm just so far behind where I should be. I remember literally saying that. And at the time, I was 38. I was 38 years old. Now, mind you, never mind the fact that number one, I was single, you know, um, no kids. I was I was working in tech. I was making a decent income and I was able to purchase this home on my own, right? Never mind that. Never mind all of those things being great accomplishments in and of itself, right? I was just so focused on, man, I feel like I'm just so far behind. I should have did this like 10 years ago. Like I just remember that's just the feeling that I had. And I'm like, now just looking back at that time, like who said at what age you have to buy a home? Like, where is it written in stone that by this age, you must have owned a home, or else you're behind in life. You know what I mean? And I'm just thinking like, no, because I can only, man, in my 20s, owning a home in my 20s. First of all, I wasn't even making nowhere near enough money to afford to own a home when I was in my 20s. Um, and, you know, it just kind of ultimately too, like with, my personal finance knowledge and things of that nature just wasn't, you know, nowhere near where it is now. It just wasn't up to snuff. So I couldn't even imagine trying to own a house in my 20s. Um, and but I just remember feeling that, really heavily. And but ultimately I kind of got over the feeling really quickly because I ultimately ended up selling my home because it was just way too much. It was just too much work to maintain, and it was just so much stuff to have to worry about. And then um, it was just a lot, more than I was willing to want to have to, deal with owning the house. So ended up selling it, but I just remember just having that feeling and really for no reason because I ultimately ended up not even keeping the house, so it was just wasted, a wasted emotion, wasted energy, um in my opinion, and now knowing knowing and having the ideas and belief that I have now, I'm just like, no, see, that was also another experience where I learned a lot. I learned a whole lot about home ownership because I kind of went into it having general understanding of how everything worked, but just the everything that goes into home ownership that you really don't know until you're actually become a homeowner. You know what I mean? I learned I ended up learning so much from that experience, and to better equip me and prepare me for if I ever decide to purchase another home. Or at this point in time, I don't see myself buying another home. Maybe when I get a little bit older, I'll probably, purchase another home. But like right now in this season of my life, not so much. But those those two times, I just those are the two times where that feeling of, feeling behind was just the most prominent for me. But then just in general, especially when we get caught doom scrolling and just on social media, on Facebook, the seeing what everybody else is doing and then comparing what you see everybody else doing to what you're doing, we can't get caught up in that, because again, we're comparing our real life in that moment to other people's highlights, um and ultimately, the saying is, there's a quote, I believe it's a quote or a saying, where it's something along the lines of comparison is the thief of joy. And I definitely, agree with that. We can't waste time comparing what, others are doing to what we're doing. We just have to move in the timeline, that we're on, because ultimately everything that we're experiencing is going towards, preparing us for what is yet to come, right? So I just wanted to, talk about that, um, especially because in this moment in my life, I'm just basically hitting reset. I'm rebuilding. I don't necessarily want to say starting over, but I'm rebuilding what I'm rebuilding a life on my own timeline and not following a timeline, an invisible timeline set by nobody. Ultimately trying to do that and following that, it just left me, you know, feeling unaccomplished, unfulfilled, burnt out, chasing after these things because you have to get that, you got to have the good job, you got to make six figures, you got to have a nice car, you definitely have to be living somewhere, in a nice place, right? You have to go after the degrees, you have to all of this stuff, and even that, I just recently got my master's degree and I'm 43, and some people might say, dang, that's late, but I think it was the perfect time for me because, again, all of the life experience and work experience, it just helped me be able to really just grasp a lot of the concepts and everything, a lot easier with, within the curriculum because of the life experience that I have. Because I would have been able to do it if I'd have went straight from, undergrad to grad. Sure, I would have been able to do it, but I'm not for sure if I would have gotten as much out of the experience, doing it in my 20s versus doing it in my 40s. You know what I mean? So that's just, where that's like a major milestone, getting a master's degree, where it could have affected me in that way, being a bit older and going back to grad school. But now I've just learned, what's for you is for you, what God has in store is for you. You follow the timeline that you're on, and you can't worry about what other people are doing. And because I have that understanding about life now, I didn't have that feeling with, going back to grad school. But I just think it's something that a lot of people probably, feel, whether they talk about it or not. You just it might be something that's constantly just in the back of your mind, like, dang, I'm just behind. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. So and so just did this. They just went to, on this vacation. They just did this thing. And here I am just sitting here trying to figure out what my next move in life is going to be. I think a lot of us have been there before, but you just have to trust that, you know, where you are is where you're meant to be. And, as long as you can, figure out the direction you want to go in, and creating a life that you want, you'll get there. And then when you get there, I think you'll be better prepared for it. You'll be able to appreciate it more. And all of this stuff is just character building type stuff. You know what I mean? Not saying that you're ungrateful or anything like that. I just think you just have a different level of appreciation and understanding, when things are aligned and things work out for your greater good. So I just think it's important, because you know everything, we are the sum of our experiences. I think that's a quote I saw or heard that quote before. I can't recall the author, but I actually looked it up earlier because I was like, who said that? You are the sum of your experiences, right? So that's what we have to look towards. Everything that, all of our successes, our failures, the things that we've been through, it's just preparing us, for what's ahead. You know, BJ BJ Neblet said that quote. I wrote it down. Um, but yes, I just wanted to remind you that you are where you're meant to be. So if any of this resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Is there an area in your life where you feel behind? Let me know so I'd love to have a chat with you about it. Let you know you're not alone, but we have to focus on our focus, and just be good stewards of, the experiences we're going through and the season that we're in, and try to glean the lessons, that come along with it, so that we can be more receptive to what life has in store for us. All right, that's a wrap. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and having this chat. Thank you for watching this video. I will see you in the next one, and take care.